Blind Justice, do you think that what you believe trumps what can be proven with facts, logic, reasoning, and evidence?
Ooh, that's interesting. I was going to ask you guys that same question yesterday when everybody was all throwing around facts and beliefs and what was it? Opinions. So let me make sure I understand the question. Are you asking me if do I think that my personal belief trumps facts and evidence? Is that the question?
Yeah, paraphrased. I asked, do you think that what you believe trumps what can be proven using facts, logic, reasoning, and evidence?
Well, it's a catch-22 question, and it's funny because I was going to pose the same one because well, it is because I'm going to answer with a belief, and I don't have any facts necessarily to back that. I believe that there is objective fact, that there is evidence, and that we can rely on the facts and evidence. Now, the question is, what constitutes facts and evidence, right? How and the veracity of it. Who's presenting it? Can we authenticate it? Can we personally research it, or do we have to rely on some authority or some person, that we trust, right? And then we have to question, well, why do we trust them? What's the measure of trust? It's not as black and white as people may want it to be. I do believe that we can have objective truth and that we can find some objectivity with something that everybody can look at or evaluate and say, this is this, right? Maybe there may be different takes on this, but this is this, right? There may be different interpretations of it. So I believe there's that aspect of facts. And I would say that facts, when you're talking about logic and reasoning, yeah, definitely. Definitely, I think that takes, if I had to prioritize or make a hierarchy of what I consider important or weighing, I would say that takes a pretty high mark for me. But I also don't. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, my belief changes all the time. But I also, in a general rule, yes. Now there are, because I'm kind of wah-wah, if you want to throw that term out there, as far as like into quantum physics and quantum mechanics and even spirituality, right? So there's all kinds of shit that we just can't prove. And I mean, so like, and I would say some quantum physicists would say 90% of what you and I do on a day-to-day basis, we cannot prove it. We cannot factually prove the shit that we do, because the majority of what we do starts in the realm of a mind space and consciousness. And the best neuroscientists and neurosurgeons cannot definitively prove where thought originates. So if everything that you do is premeditated or pre-exists as thought or as energy, is what I believe, that it's in an energy state, and it's actually matter from mind rather than the other way around. Then yeah, so there. That's why it's not such a simple answer. In a general rule, when we're talking about physical elements and things like that, yes, I would say that logic, reason, and facts trump belief. But there's a deeper interconnectedness at the quantum level, quantum mechanics, that there's all kinds of shit that we just cannot yet prove in simple terms. And I think that's just the nature of the reality we live in.
I can totally get on board with your questioning who might be the arbiter of truth. And that is a very valid point. However, I think where the waters were muddied, so to speak, was I didn't ask if you believe that your beliefs, that's just sort of not really the question that was posed. I asked, do you think your beliefs trump? And when you go down those forks in this line of reasoning, it bifurcates several times to where, of course, it'd be hard to come to any solid conclusion. But you can, what can be proven it can be so done with repeatability in outcome. Can we agree there?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I know you didn't mean to give a well, yes, but no answer, because of course it's a dynamic topic, and it when the waters are muddied the way they were, you can get lost in the muck and mire quite quickly. But if you could just rethink the question as to whether you think your beliefs trump X, Y, and Z, or whether you believe they trump X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, I don't think that I can answer that one way or the other. I can't give you A or B in general terms. I think I would have to answer that on a very specific case-by-case thing. For instance, do I believe, humans, or do I think that humans exist more than just a physical entity? Yes. Can I prove it? No, I can't. Right? Right. Okay. So that's I have to evaluate the evidence, right? And I don't know. Well, again, it goes to whoever just said what the arbiter of truth is. Like some people standard for proof, what they believe to be proof, like sufficient, is different than others. So there are some things that I believe so, and strong isn't even the word. Just I can't explain it. It's an ingrained belief that any attempt to prove or disprove in physical sense, it's a non-physical thing, is kind of insanity. So that's why it has to be evaluated on a case by case. If we're talking about physical evidence in a case, then sure, yeah, we can evaluate the evidence. Absolutely, let's use logic, let's use reason. It can be proved or disproved, no problem. But then when we're talking about things that we're just barely scratching the surface on, like quantum physics and things like that, dude, it's a whole new ballgame. So I think it has to be a case by case. Yeah.
Can we lessen the ambiguity by maybe establishing some parameters as an example in which we can come to a conclusion that is something more than just faith-based?
Absolutely. Yeah, go for it.
Well, I do not doubt that you grasp the premise of this construct. So I'll leave it on you. Is there anything that you would use as an example to solidify coming to a binary conclusion?
Yeah, if I it's I have to give again. You have to give a specific case. So I think sure, maybe that helps. I think proof would be a sufficient level of evidence that somebody evaluates to determine veracity of a claim.
Right, based on repeatability.
Sure. No, because that, I mean, we could, for the sake of argument, we could say that proof is established and accepted by all parties. But then that's where the line is a shifting. It's not so objective because every individual has a different measure of what the different standard that they have to meet in order to say, you know what, that's it. My mind is made up. Yep, that's enough evidence. That proves it. That solidifies it. Even if it's repeatable, you know, you can repeat it 100 times and somebody says, well, still not enough evidence for me. Some people say, well, I just need to see it once. Yep, that's enough evidence. I got it. I understand it. This proves it. You know, so it really, a lot of this stuff boils down to, you know, I think not just repeatability, but the repeatability being individually repeatable, not some professional, quote unquote, professional repeating it and demonstrating it. But if somebody can personally research it for themselves and find enough credibility in the evidence to make that conclusion, then yeah, that's fine. I'm cool with that. That's why I think reason and logic trumps, in my opinion, would trump the evidence, because evidence can be doctored, it can be, you know, falsified, and it can be, you can force an outcome on an experiment and repeat it and have it repeated over and over.
All right. Well, to once again lessen the ambiguity, could you maybe remove some of those qualifiers in which the question would be less muddled? And after doing so, I'm imbuing you with the metric in which we need to use to come to a binary conclusion.
Sure. So let's just say there's a murder, right? And there's a suspect in the murder, and it's Joe Schmo is the suspect in the murder. And there's evidence is collected, and we have, you know, Joe Schmo's DNA on the murder weapon. That's like a knife in the guy's chest, you know, right in the heart. So it's pretty clear that the knife to the heart killed this guy. Coroner verifies, yep. The guy bled out because of a fucking knife in his heart. And Joe Schmo's DNA's on it. Is that sufficient evidence? Not necessarily. You know, there could be 20 other people's DNA on it. It could be a kitchen knife from a fucking restaurant. You know, that's not sufficient evidence for me. Well, was Joe Schmo the last guy seen with the deceased? Well, that is not looking good for Joe Schmo, right? Just because he was the last guy seen doesn't mean he was the guy that killed him, but it makes him probably suspect number one. So if, you know, again, you go to motive, does the guy have a reason to kill him? Was there history with this? I think clear objective evidence would obviously be the video, if there was video of the fucking Joe Schmo putting the knife in the guy's heart. You know, clear of that, there's doubt. There can be doubt that Joe Schmo did it. So I think that would be a clear objective standard, video and audio evidence of the thing happening. Short of that, you can try to spin a case and say, well, yeah, he has motive. You know, the deceased was banging his wife, and he was angry, and he confronted him multiple times. There's a text, you know, threatening that he's going to kill him. Does that mean Joe Schmo did it? No, not necessarily. There's probably a good case to be brought on against it. Maybe Joe Schmo worked in the kitchen as well, and that's why his DNA's on the knife. And he happened to be closing, and they got into a spat, but somebody else had beef with him and took the opportunity to make Joe Schmo look like the murderer. So, you know, for me, that's not. I have to have the concrete evidence. I have to have it beyond a reasonable doubt, meaning there's video. There's just, even if I couldn't see it, somebody I trust can see it. Say, yep, that's Joe Schmo putting the knife in the guy's heart. That's definitely it. That would be an objective standard where I would say, yep, there's sufficient proof.
All right. So just to maybe clarify this, you have irrefutable, quantifiable, demonstrable evidence that Joe Schmo stuck a knife in this guy's heart. you have the DNA, you have the video evidence, you have a Chronos 24,000 frame per second video of it. You have several eyewitnesses. I mean, there is no way to doubt the fact that Joe Schmo murdered this guy. Is there any possible way that your belief that he did not do it would trump all of these things?
No. So if Joe Schmo was my best boo in the world, and I knew him for years, and there's no way I could, I know the guy. There's no way he'd do this. There's no way, if I really believed, he's the best guy in the world, he would never snap. Even if, there was the perfect storm, and there's no way. Even if I had that belief about somebody, which I don't, I would still be able to like evaluate the evidence. Be like, well, dude, you fucking did it. So no, the evidence would trump the belief. Absolutely.
All right, that was sort of a long-winded but very thought out, very concise exercise of whether or not your belief would trump something that can be proven. So I thank you for your binary answer, which is more than I can say that I've gotten from other people that I have asked the question of. I appreciate your participation in this little game.
Oh yeah, man. I think there's a lot of that where we can meet the measure. And I think, like I said, that measure is different for everybody. I think if for some people it's lower, the bar is lower. Some people say, well, his DNA's on it, fuck it, he's guilty. Some people would say, well, they would let their biases get involved with it and say, well, they had spat, of course he killed him because he's banging his wife, and they would their measure, and that's what's so tricky about a jury. That's why the jury panel is carefully selected by both the defense and the prosecution, because they try to screen out exactly what we're talking about. They're trying to screen out people who have different bars for their standard for proof, and then whether or not they will be able to evaluate the evidence and say, hey, is this enough to beyond a reasonable doubt? That's the whole discussion, But not everything is so clear cut. Not everything is so packaged and nicely in bow as video evidence of the thing happening. And that's tricky.
Well, the standard being set would have to be, in my opinion, the crux of whether you could move forward or not. Would you agree with that?
Move forward in what way?
Move forward in investigating what conclusion can be come to given the data set.
Oh yeah. I think everybody would have to, if it's person by person, or if it's a jury of 12 people, I think you'd have to agree, if you're in deliberation, agree to a standard collectively before you can move forward. Absolutely.
Well, I'm not trying to monopolize this conversation. There are a lot of people in the room. If anyone wants to elaborate or ask their own questions.
No, I enjoy the conversation and appreciate the question. I wasn't deliberately trying to be ambiguous. It's just, I think there's way more about the universe and the nature of reality that we collectively don't cognitively know, but we intuitively know. And so that's the delineation, that's the line. Like, I think we intuitively know everything about the universe. Now, how do we access the knowledge? If it's stored in a quantum computing system in every cell of our DNA, how do we get access to that cognitively to share it? That's the trick, and that's where some people get epiphanies, and some people get these brilliant ideas to create new technology and advance the species and advance, make life more enjoyable and more easy for for future generations. If you look at history, you look at these brilliant inventors throughout the last, I don't know, 500-600 years since the Renaissance, and it's the same story over and over again. You know, they're not sitting at a desk trying to crack a code, trying to think of this brilliant thing to ease humanity or to perpetuate humanity forward. They're typically doing something enjoyable, relaxing under a tree, going for a hike, you know, eating a meal, and then this lightning bolt strikes, and they don't even have the terms for it. They start drawing it, they start sketching it, they start trying to figure out terms for it, they start writing mathematical equations to it, they start making music to it, and then eventually they get words to describe it and design it. And you have, you know, the light bulb, and you have all these crazy advances in technology, where the hell did it come from? And I think that's why I say there's so much that we have intuitive knowledge about the reality that we live in that we may not be able to prove and even talk about currently, but it's there.
Well, I don't think you were being ambiguous in the least. I think you were trying to alleviate ambiguity by further investigating and categorizing the parameters which most people just overlook. And if people are willing to just take things on face value and not think critically about them, they're easily brought to an erroneous conclusion.
Oh, no, I think that I agree with you 100%. Yeah, I think that's the common state that people are in. I think they're not challenged to think critically and evaluate for themselves. And then when you ask them to the research, or ask them if they have research, like if they make a claim, they make a statement, and you say, okay, prove that. You know, where's your evidence for that? Or where are you getting this from? You know, cite what source you got this idea from. And it wasn't, like I just mentioned, like a creative epiphany of some invention, a new idea per se for humanity, but it was something that they're repeated, because it's an idea that you recognize, like, oh, I've already heard this from, you know, all these other sources. Where did you hear it? And then they like, well, I heard it from my mom. Of course, my mom told me, or I heard it from my school teacher. I heard it from so-and-so on NBC, and you know, whatever. They cite a source that they just heard it from, but they haven't actually researched the idea. They haven't researched the concepts to check to see if it's true for themselves. Then it's really not their idea. And I think that's the majority of people walk around with ideas that actually aren't theirs. If you're familiar with the Lego movie, that's the there's the part where it's like you ever had an original idea? It has like the double-decker couch idea. It's like the only original idea this character's ever had. I think that's the majority of people walk around in that mind state of not actually evaluating things for themselves and not actually researching, improving or disproving, finding what measure they have standard for themselves to believe something is true. A lot of times it's an appeal to authority. I think the majority of people operate under that measure. They don't have a set measure. They have an innate system of an appeal to authority. If they believe somebody to be, quote unquote, an authority on something, then they don't have to research it. That's because, well, Fox said it. Well, you know, the president said it. Well, Dr. So-and-so. And because they have a DR or a PhD or whatever associated with their name, well, that's good enough for me. It must be true.
Well, and it's saddening how when you interact with people on a daily basis, and if you're paying attention, how often whom you're conversing with employs logical fallacies, whether it's an appeal to authority, appeal to antiquity, appeal to ignorance is an often employed fallacy. And most people not only employ them, they don't even realize that they're employing them, because somewhere in this neural path, these synaptic connections have been made to just streamline to the fallacy. And when people don't observe that or are even cognizant of doing so, it's a detriment to all parties involved.
Yeah, and it's difficult too to point that out. It's something that I've been trying to practice, and sometimes you just can't. Sometimes it's not the time. It's pareidolia. I don't know if you're familiar with that effect.
Vaguely.
Yeah, so pareidolia is a psychological effect. So basically, the best way to explain it would be, if you've ever sat on your back and looked at, cumulonimbus clouds with somebody, and you see a rabbit and they see a fish, right? Like you have preset, like you said, neural pathways that went into your brain of your thinking, because you've thought the same thought how many times to create that it actually forms the physical matter of the brain, the channels in the brain. And you can even call it, I don't know, a different ditch, whatever, thinking's in the ditch or whatever. Like you have these ditches in your brain because of the neural pathways that you create, because you're thinking the same old thoughts, these old tired thoughts, don't have any proof or evidence to it. And it's just a belief. It becomes this ingrained belief. So when you see this thing and you see fish and everyone else sees rabbit, people that can see it objectively say, measure it and say, well, this is a rabbit. That's pareidolia. That's where you see basically what your preconceptions, your underpinnings, your worldview, your biases help you present. And some of these things are so ingrained and they're parasitic. They eat away at people's psyche and their thinking, and it becomes prevalent in how they view life. It's their worldview. So there's actually a few parasites that do something like this. To one of them, I can't name the parasites, but one of them affects field mice. It actually gets into the brain of a field mouse and hijacks the motor function of the mouse and makes the mouse run out in front of cats, like, and dance around in front of cats, because the ideal environment that the parasite wants to live in is inside the stomach of the cat. And there's another parasite that infects ants, and it does the same thing with an ant. It hijacks the motor function of the ant, drives the ant up the stalk of grass, the highest grass it can get onto. So because its ideal place, the parasite's ideal place to live in, is inside ruminated stomachs, so like sheep and things like that. So they get up to the high part of the grass, so the ant gets eaten and dumps in the gut of the stomach. So ideas that are that pervasive, that are that destructive to the individual, where it becomes a belief that they're willing to die or kill for, without any objective proof that it's real or true, is a parasite that is ultimately going to bring destruction upon the person and then spread and bring destruction upon humanity.
Well, physiologically aside, it's the paradox of being predisposed to being a presuppositionalist. I mean, it's cyclical. I mean, and if you're ignorant of this vicious cycle that you're in, how would one even hope to overcome it?
Yeah, sometimes it's you'll be surprised, man. There's just, you may not be surprised. Some people will be surprised, but because I don't know, but some people may be surprised that there are cases of people just in a cyclical cycle like that, and self-destruction, that will have an epiphany to what they're doing. Something will, they've evaluated the same thing over and over and over, or looked at it, not necessarily evaluated. Something, they hear it differently. They hear it with different ears, or look at it with different eyes, and then it will just click that, oh shit, what if this isn't true? And then they begin, a journey of self-discovery and what is true, and get out of that cycle, self-correct. And so that's why that's the encouragement that I have, is that I've had that where I've had very destructive views that I've then it was in a cycle and got out of, because similar things, hearing different things, looking at different things, and people, different messages that people shared that I was in a different mind space to hear. So it's encouragement to continue to share truth, in different ways. That's why I don't judge people's delivery on how they try to share communication. Like, hey, if they want to go out and have happy fuck the cops day and share their views via that, or if they want to go and have a discussion kind of like what we're having to try to use reason and logic and discuss different viewpoints in that, then more power to them. You can shift gears and try different approaches to reach different people. Sometimes it's a shock and awe factor will help them wake up. Sometimes it's presenting a case in a way that they can see or hear.